The Awakening. The Galactic Assembly Hall fell silent as Admiral Zixtar entered, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides, all 6 of his eyes downcast. The gathered representatives of the 17 remaining civilizations watched in horrified silence as the projection behind him flickered to life, showing the smoldering remains of what had once been the Pellerin homeworld. The Void Tide has claimed another system, Zixtar announced, his voice hollow. 17 billion souls. Gone. Murmurs of despair rippled through the assembly. The Void Tide, a mysterious force of destruction that had appeared from beyond the galactic rim 6 cycles ago, had already devoured 12 civilizations, each more technologically advanced than the last. No defense had worked. No diplomatic overture had been acknowledged. The tide simply consumed everything in its path with a cold, mechanical precision that defied understanding. The Pellerin defense grid was our strongest line, continued Zixtar. Their quantum barriers were supposed to be impenetrable. Elder Shelvix, the ancient representative of the Arxian Conclave, rose on his gravity platform. We have exhausted our conventional options. Admiral, perhaps it is time we consider unconventional ones. The assembly erupted in hisses and clicks of disagreement, but Shelvix raised a withered limb for silence. The archives speak of another species, he said, one that we, removed from our histories, one whose very name was forbidden to speak after the Great Purge. Admiral Zixtar's gill slits pulsed with agitation. You speak of myths, Elder. I speak of humans, Shelvix replied, causing a wave of shocked silence to sweep across the hall. The word hung in the air like a curse, a name unspoken for nearly 3 centuries. The humans had been a problem that the Galactic Council of the time had chosen to solve with overwhelming force. Their homeworld had been quarantined, their colonies dismantled, their fleets scattered. It had been believed that they were extinct, a savage, unpredictable species removed from the galaxy for the greater harmony. The humans were eradicated, said Representative Quoll of the Meridian Syndicate, their crystalline form refracting light nervously. Were they? Challenged Shelvix. The archives suggest otherwise. There were survivors, exiles who fled to the far reaches, beyond our jurisdiction. Admiral Zixtar's tactical mind began to race. Even if they still exist, what use would they be against the Void Tide? They were primitives, barely capable of interstellar travel when we intervened. Shelvix's ancient eyes narrowed. They were more than that, Admiral. Much more. The Council feared them not for their technology, but for what they were. In all the galaxy's recorded history, no species has possessed the human's capacity for adaptation, for survival against impossible odds, for warfare. They were savages, hissed Quoll. They were survivors, corrected Shelvix. And survival is what we now desperately need. The assembly debated for 3 full days. In the end, desperation won out over ancient prejudices. A mission was authorized, a last desperate gambit to locate any surviving human enclaves and recruit them against the Void Tide. Admiral Zixtar himself led the expedition, taking a stealth corvette into the uncharted regions beyond the outer spiral, following fragmented data from the archives. For weeks, they found nothing but dead worlds and empty space, until they detected an anomalous energy signature emanating from a desolate, ice-covered moon orbiting a gas giant in a forgotten star system. As they approached, their sensors detected crude but effective defense platforms. Before they could react, their ship's systems went dark, caught in some kind of electromagnetic disruption field. They drifted, helpless, as a battered vessel approached, its design unlike anything in the galactic registry. "We're being hailed," reported Navigator Pelfon, surprise evident in her voice. In ancient galactic standard. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a face that sent a collective shudder through the bridge crew. 2 eyes, not compound or multifaceted but simple binocular orbs. No scales, no carapace, no tentacles, just bare skin covered in a growth of facial hair. A human. "You're a long way from home, council ship," said the human, its mouth forming unfamiliar patterns around the words. "State your business or be destroyed." Admiral Zix-Tar stepped forward, forcing himself to meet the human's gaze. "I am Admiral Zix-Tar of the Galactic Council. We come seeking aid against an enemy that threatens all life in the galaxy." The human's mouth curled into what the archives would later identify as his smile and expression that could denote either friendliness or predatory intent. In this case, it was impossible to determine which. "The mighty council, asking for our help." The human laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "That's rich. You'll forgive us if we're not exactly rushing to your rescue. Last I checked, your kind was busy bombing our colonies back to the Stone Age." "That was a different time," Zix-Tar said carefully. "A different council." "Tell that to the dead of New Eden," the human replied coldly. "Or Proxima Colony, or New Mars." Zix-Tar lowered his head. "We cannot change the past, but there will be no future for any of us if this threat is not stopped." The human seemed to consider this, its strange face unreadable to Zix-Tar's alien perception. Finally, it spoke. "I'll bring this to the Council of Captains. No promises. In the meantime, you'll remain where you are, systems offline. Any attempt to reactivate your vessel will be considered hostile." The transmission cut off. For 3 days, they drifted, their fate in the hands of creatures long dismissed as extinct. On the 4th day, a different vessel approached, larger, more sophisticated than the patrol craft. They were boarded by 6 humans, each wearing utilitarian environment suits and carrying primitive but deadly-looking projectile weapons. Their leader removed her helmet, revealing a face with features different from the first human they'd encountered. Darker skin, differently shaped eyes, but unmistakably of the same species. "I'm Captain Amara Chen of the Free Human Enclave," she announced. "I've been authorized to hear your plea directly. Make it count." Admiral Zix-Tar activated a holographic display, showing the progression of the Void Tide's destruction across the galaxy. Captain Chen watched impassively as world after world was consumed, billions of lives extinguished. "Our best defenses have failed," Zix-Tar concluded. "Our most powerful weapons barely slow it down. We need something different, something the Tide hasn't encountered before." "And you think that's us?" Captain Chen asked, eyebrow raised. "What exactly do you expect a bunch of primitive savages to do against something your advanced civilizations couldn't handle?" Shalvix, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "The historical records indicate that humans possessed unique qualities, an adaptability, a ruthlessness when threatened, and most importantly, an unpredictability that no eye or logical entity could fully anticipate." Chen laughed bitterly. "So that's it. You want to unleash the monsters again. Point the savage humans at your problem, and see what happens." "We want to survive," Zix-Tar said simply, "and we believe you can help us do that." Captain Chen's eyes narrowed. "And what do we get out of this arrangement, assuming we agree?" "A return to the galactic community," offered Zix-Tar. "Recognition of your sovereignty. Reparations for past wrongs." "Pretty words," Chen replied. "But I notice you're only offering them when you need something from us." Elder Shelvik stepped forward, his ancient form trembling slightly. "There is another consideration, Captain. The Void Tide consumes all in its path. It does not discriminate. Eventually, it will find its way here, to your hidden refuge. Your people will die just as surely as ours." This gave Chen pause. She studied the holograms again, watching the inexorable advance of destruction. "I'll need to discuss this with the full Council of Captains," she finally said. "But I'll tell you this much. If we agree to help, it won't be on your terms. It will be on ours. And you may not like what you unleash." 2 weeks later, a fleet of 30 human vessels, a motley collection of retrofitted ships that ranged from mining platforms to crude but effective warships, entered Galactic Council space. Their arrival sent shockwaves through the remaining civilizations. The humans, long believed extinct, had returned. The human delegation, led by Captain Chen and 6 other members of their Council of Captains, met with the Galactic Assembly. The terms they laid out were clear. They would fight the Void Tide, but in return, they demanded full sovereignty, recognition of their right to reestablish colonies, and a seat on the Galactic Council itself. "You're in no position to make such demands," objected Representative Cole. Captain Liu, one of the human delegation, stepped forward. "Actually, we are. You need us more than we need you. The way we see it, we have 3 options. Help you and secure our future, return to our hidden enclave, and take our chances. Or what?" asked Admiral Zixtar. "Or take advantage of your weakened state to exact revenge for what was done to our people," Liu said coldly. 3 centuries might seem like a long time to you, but humans have very, very long memories when it comes to genocide. The Assembly reluctantly agreed to the humans' terms. What choice did they have? The Void Tide had claimed another system during the negotiations alone. The first joint operation against the Void Tide took place at the Cassiopean Drift. The plan was simple. The combined galactic fleet would engage the Tide's main force, while the humans tested various weapons and tactical approaches to identify any weaknesses. What followed shocked even the most battle-hardened members of the galactic forces. The humans fought like nothing they had ever witnessed. Where the galactic ships followed strict tactical doctrines, the humans seemed to operate with a controlled chaos, constantly changing strategies, taking risks that bordered on suicide, employing weapons that ranged from elegant to brutally primitive. They deployed nuclear mines, a weapon banned for centuries due to its indiscriminate nature. They rammed smaller vessels directly into the Tide's processing nodes in kamikaze attacks. They broadcast across all frequencies, creating a cacophony of signals that seemed to temporarily confuse the Tide's coordination. And for the first time since the Void Tide had appeared, it retreated. Not a victory, not yet, but not the total defeat that had become the norm. A stalemate, and in that stalemate, a sliver of hope. How? Admiral Zixtar asked Captain Chen afterward, as they reviewed the battle data. "How did you know what to do?" Chen's face was grim. "We didn't, but humans are good at one thing above all others, Admiral. When backed into a corner, we fight dirty. We try everything. We don't follow rules of engagement when our survival is at stake." Zixtar studied the human with new understanding and new apprehension. "The Archivs were right to fear you, weren't they?" Chen's expression didn't change. "The Archivs were right about one thing. When it comes to survival, there's no species more dangerous than humans. You're just fortunate we're on your side. For now." As the human ships regrouped and prepared for the next engagement, word of their effectiveness spread throughout the remaining civilizations. Hope began to flicker where before there had been only despair. But with that hope came a new fear. For if the humans could find weaknesses in the seemingly invincible Void Tide, what weaknesses might they find in their former oppressors? The weapon of last resort had been unleashed. But would the galaxy survive what came after? The reckoning. 3 months after the stalemate at the Cassiopean Drift, the galaxy held its breath. The Void Tide had slowed its advance but not stopped. It seemed to be analyzing, adapting, learning from its first encounter with humanity. In the orbital shipyards above Xanthar Prime, the last great industrial center of the Galactic Council, humans worked alongside aliens who had once sought their extinction. The Uneasy Alliance was producing a new kind of fleet, one that incorporated human unpredictability with alien technology. Admiral Zixtar found Captain Chen in the prototype lab, where she was arguing with a team of Meridian engineers. "Your shield harmonics are too predictable," she insisted, pointing at a holographic display. "The Tide will adapt to the pattern within minutes." "But without the pattern, the efficiency drops by 37%, objected Chief Engineer Kolnar. "I'd rather have inefficient shields that work than perfect shields that fail," Chen countered. "Randomize the frequencies, make them chaotic." Zixtar cleared his throat, or the equivalent for his species. Captain Chen, a moment. Chen followed him to a private conference room, where representatives from the 5 largest remaining civilizations waited, along with 3 other human captains. "We've detected a change in the Void Tide's behavior," Zixtar announced without preamble. "It's concentrating its forces. All signs point to a massive assault on Xanthar Prime within the next 72 hours. Captain Liu leaned forward. "It's testing us, probing for weaknesses after our last encounter." "Our fleet isn't ready," said Ambassador Trell of the Solarian Compact. "The new ships are still being outfitted. The defense grid is at 70% capacity at best." "Then we don't fight conventionally," said Captain Rodriguez, the most aggressive of the human leaders. "We change the rules of engagement." "Explain," demanded Zixtar. Rodriguez activated a holographic display showing Xanthar Prime and its surrounding space. "The tide moves like a predator, adapting to its prey's defenses. So we need to make it focus on a target, then hit it from an unexpected direction." "You're suggesting a decoy," Zixtar realized. "But what could possibly draw the tide's attention away from a target as valuable as Xanthar Prime?" The human captains exchanged glances. Finally, Chen spoke. "Us, the humans, we're the only thing that's ever given it pause. We'll make ourselves the target." "That's suicide," objected Ambassador Trell. "Not if we're smart about it," Rodriguez replied with a predatory smile. "And humans are very, very good at making ourselves hard to kill." The plan they outlined was audacious to the point of insanity. The humans would take their 30 vessels and engage the Void Tide directly, drawing its attention while appearing to protect something of great value. Meanwhile, the galactic fleet would circle around and strike at what the humans had identified as a potential weakness: communication nodes that coordinated the tide's individual components. "And what is this valuable target you'll appear to be protecting?" asked Zixtar. Captain Chen's expression was grim. "An uninhabited system near the Krell Expanse. We'll make it look like we've hidden our families there. Our children, our future. Nothing draws a predator like vulnerable young." The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably, reminded again of the calculating nature of their human allies. "And if the tide doesn't take the bait?" asked Ambassador Trell. "Then we move to Plan B," said Rodriguez. "Which is?" "We haven't come up with it yet," Rodriguez admitted. "But we will if we need to. That's what humans do." 48 hours later, the trap was set. The human fleet positioned itself around an unremarkable star system, broadcasting heavily encrypted communications and setting up defensive perimeters that suggested something of immense value was being protected. The galactic fleet waited in the shadow of a nearby nebula, engines cold, weapons primed. The Void Tide arrived with a precision that sent chills through even the most hardened veterans. One moment, space was empty. The next, a swarm of dark, geometrically perfect ships filled the sensors, thousands of them, moving with a hive-mind coordination that seemed both mechanical and eerily organic. "It took the bait." Chen's voice crackled over the secure channel to Admiral Zixtar's flagship. "Beginning Phase 1. What followed was a display of combat tactics that defied conventional military doctrine. The human ships broke formation immediately, each vessel seeming to fight independently yet somehow maintaining a cohesive defense. They employed weapons that the galactic engineers had dismissed as crude or impractical: electromagnetic pulse bombs, clouds of superheated plasma, even kinetic impactors made from asteroids hastily fitted with drive units. From his command chair, Admiral Zixtar watched in growing awe as the humans held their own against overwhelming odds. Their ships took damage that would have caused galactic captains to retreat, yet they continued fighting, systems jury-rigged, hulls breached, but somehow still functional. "They're drawing the tide in," reported his tactical officer. Communication node signatures detected at coordinates 227 Mark 43. "All ships, prepare to engage," ordered Zixtar. "On my mark." The human fleet continued its fighting retreat, drawing more and more of the Void Tide ships into the trap. Just when it seemed they could take no more punishment, Rodriguez's flagship, the Thunderchild, broke formation and accelerated directly toward the heart of the Tide's formation. "Rodriguez, what are you doing?" Chen's voice demanded over the open channel. "Changing the game," came the reply. "They're adapting too quickly. Time for Plan B." Before anyone could object, the Thunderchild detonated its reactor core, not in a standard explosion, but in a precisely calculated antimatter cascade that created a temporary subspace rift. The effect rippled through the Tide's formation, disrupting the signal coherence between its ships. "Now," shouted Zixtar. The galactic fleet surged from hiding, weapons blazing, targeting the communication nodes that the Thunderchild's sacrifice had momentarily exposed. For 16 brutal minutes, the battle hung in the balance. Then, gradually, the coordination between the Tide's vessels began to falter. Ships collided with one another. Attack patterns became predictable. "It's working," breathed Pelfon, watching the tactical display. "They're losing cohesion." But the Tide wasn't finished. As if sensing its vulnerability, it began to consolidate, drawing its forces into a tighter formation. The remaining human ships found themselves surrounded, taking devastating fire from all sides. "We can't hold much longer," Chen reported, her transmission breaking up as her ship's communications array took damage. "If you're going to finish this, do it now." Admiral Zixtar hesitated. The next phase of the attack would mean sacrificing the human fleet entirely. He had known this was a possibility. The humans themselves had calculated the odds, but now, faced with the reality of it. "Admiral," Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. "Remember what I told you about humans. We're our most dangerous when cornered." "Admiral," Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. "Remember what I told you about humans. We're our most dangerous when cornered." Before he could respond, the human ships executed a maneuver that no galactic tactician would have conceived. They activated their FTL drives simultaneously, not to escape, but to create a massive gravimetric shear directly in the heart of the Tide's formation. The laws of physics that prohibited such actions in normal space were clear, but the humans had gambled that within the subspace distortion created by the Thunderchild's sacrifice, those laws might temporarily bend. They were right. The resulting gravimetric cataclysm tore through the Void Tide's formation like a divine hand, ripping apart ships and severing the quantum entanglement links that allowed the Tide to function as a collective entity. For several seconds, the tactical display was blank, sensors overwhelmed by the energy release. When it cleared, the Void Tide was in disarray. Its ships drifted, uncoordinated, vulnerable. And of the human fleet, there was no sign. "All ships, engage and destroy," ordered Zixtar, his voice tight with an emotion he couldn't name. "Don't let their sacrifice be in vain." The cleanup operation took hours, but by the end, the Void Tide, the unstoppable force that had consumed 12 civilizations, was reduced to scattered fragments, hunted down one by the galactic fleet. As the last of the Tide's vessels was destroyed, a single transmission reached Zixtar's flagship. It was faint, originating from the edge of the system. "Don't count us out just yet, Admiral," came Chen's voice, weak but unmistakable. "Humans are hard to kill, remember." 3 of the 30 human ships had survived. Barely. They had executed emergency FTL jumps microseconds before the gravimetric shear reached critical mass, riding the wave of destruction to the system's edge. The vessels were ruined, life support failing, but their crews were alive. In the days that followed, as the galaxy celebrated its salvation, the survivors of the Void Tide conflict gathered on Sapphire Prime. The human captains, Shen among them, were hailed as heroes, the saviors of galactic civilization. But in private councils, a new concern began to emerge. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that frightened even their allies. Their willingness to sacrifice, to employ tactics that bordered on suicidal, to think in ways that defied conventional logic. These were qualities that made them invaluable against the void tide, but potentially dangerous in peacetime. They have earned their place among us, Elder Shelvix acknowledged in a closed session of the council. But we must be cautious. The weapon we unleashed may not be so easily contained. Admiral Zixtar, who had fought alongside the humans and seen both their capacity for violence and their essential humanity, disagreed. They're not weapons to be contained, Elder. They're people, complex, contradictory, capable of both great destruction and great creation. Like all of us. But unlike all of us, countered Representative Cole, they seem to thrive on chaos, to embrace it. As if to punctuate this point, the doors to the council chamber opened, and Captain Chen entered, still bearing the scars of battle. "Discussing our future, gentlemen," she asked with that unsettling human smile. "Don't worry, we've had plenty of time to think about it too." She placed a data crystal on the table. "Our terms, non-negotiable." Elder Shelvix activated the crystal, projecting its contents for all to see. The humans wanted not merely a place in galactic society, but a fundamental restructuring of how that society operated. More democratic representation, less centralized authority, freedom for species to develop along their own paths without interference. "This is revolutionary," Shelvix said finally. "That's what we do," Chen replied simply. "We survived on the margins of your perfect, orderly galaxy for 3 centuries. We watched and learned. And we think the void tide was just the beginning of the challenges this galaxy will face. The old ways won't be enough." "And if we refuse?" asked Cole. Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. "Then you'll have saved yourselves from one threat only to face another. We won't go back to the shadows. Not again." The silence that followed was heavy with implication. Finally, Admiral Zixtar spoke. "The galaxy is changing, colleagues. Perhaps it's time we change with it." In the end, the council agreed to most of the humans' terms. What choice did they have? The species that had saved them from extinction had proven itself to be the most adaptable, the most resilient, and, when necessary, the most ruthless in the galaxy. Better to have them as allies than as potential adversaries. In the end, the council agreed to most of the humans' terms. What choice did they have? The species that had saved them from extinction had proven itself to be the most adaptable, the most resilient, and, when necessary, the most ruthless in the galaxy. Better to have them as allies than as potential adversaries. As the new galactic charter was signed, establishing a more representative council and guaranteeing the rights of all sentient species, Admiral Zixtar found himself standing next to Captain Chen on an observation deck overlooking the shipyards. "Was this your plan all along?" he asked her. "To use the crisis to force change?" Chen watched as human and alien engineers worked side by side, building a new generation of ships. "No, our plan was to survive, just as it's always been. The rest evolved naturally." "And what happens now?" Zixtar gestured to the stars beyond the viewport. "There are still threats out there. Unknown dangers." Chen's smile this time seemed genuine, without the predatory edge he had come to associate with humans in battle. Now we do what humans have always done best, Admiral. We adapt. We explore. We build." She turned to face him fully. "And if necessary, we fight. But this time, we fight together." As they stood there, watching the birth of a new galactic order, Zixtar reflected on the strange twist of fate that had led them here. The Council had sought a weapon of last resort and had instead found partners. The humans had been unleashed, yes, but not as the mindless force of destruction the ancient records had feared. They had been unleashed as equals, bringing with them all their chaotic innovation, their stubborn resilience, and their capacity for both tremendous violence and surprising compassion. The galaxy would never be the same again. And perhaps, Zixtar thought, that was exactly what it needed.